have Linn here today from the colony, the director, and she's going to be talking about refugees and incorporating them into the community and helping them get established here. Thank you, Emily. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's so great to be here. I really appreciate you taking your lunch and spending it with me today. My name is Linn, and I am the director of Canopy, Northwest Arkansas. We are a new organization. We were founded back in the spring of 2016, so a little over a year ago. And we are based in Fayetteville. And so I'm just going to be sharing a little bit about our organization today and what we do, and then also sharing some information about who refugees are and what the process is to come here. And then I look forward to taking lots of questions from you all. So first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of an idea about who Canopy is. So this is our mission statement. We are a group of Northwest Arkansas residents who want to see our community become a place where refugees are welcomed and provided with everything they need to build new lives. So for us, we see this as there's two parts to our mission, and they're both really important. We need to make sure people feel welcome, they feel safe, and like they're a part of the community. But then they also need to be equipped. They need to be given the tools that they need so they can take care of themselves and they can become active participants in our community here. So we play a big part in both of those things. We want to make sure that they are welcomed, they are greeted with a hug and a smile, and then they are given people to walk alongside them, they're given the resources that they need so that they can take care of themselves and they can contribute to this wonderful place that we live in Northwest Arkansas.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm a little deaf, so I'm having a little trouble hearing.
There we go. Will that be better? Can you all hear me a little better? Okay, perfect. Yes, I don't have what one would call a booming voice exactly. Okay. So this here is a kind of a complicated diagram, but it explains sort of who Canopy is and how we fit into refugee resettlement in the United States. Refugee resettlement is not a simple thing in America. It's not, you maybe have read stories from other countries where families can just raise their hands basically and say, hey, we'd love to have refugees in our home, and that can kind of work. In the United States, it doesn't work that way. The Refugee Resettlement Program is run by the State Department at the very top. And so they take care of everything that happens on the other side of the ocean, including figuring out who's a refugee and who's not, and who gets to come to our country and who doesn't, and we'll get into that in a minute. But once they've figured out that somebody is a refugee and that they're going to come to the United States, then they partner with 9 charities, 9 different nonprofits, and it's only these 9 nonprofits who have the permission of the government, of the State Department, to work with refugees. Some of them are pretty big and famous. You might have heard of Catholic Charities, it's the largest. World Relief is another great one, or Church World Service, International Rescue Committee. One of them is the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service. They're actually the 2nd largest nonprofit that partners with the State Department for Refugee Resettlement, and we have a partnership with them. So each of these 9 nonprofits then has offices or partner organizations in cities all around the United States. And it's through those offices or partners that they're able to resettle refugees in cities all across America. And so the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service has 47 sites across our country, all around the United States, and Canopy is their newest site. So we were formed, like I said, last spring. We incorporated as a nonprofit in February so that we could partner with them in order to, when refugees have been admitted to the United States, in order for them to be able to find the help that they need and the resources that they need so that they're actually able to become productive members of our community. So that's sort of how we fit into everything. But kind of the important thing that I like to emphasize is that the way we got our start is pretty unique. A lot of sites are started when one of these charities identifies an area of the country that they think would be great for refugee resettlement, and they just start a site there. But what happened with us is we actually were started from the ground up. There was a really big group of people that kind of all got organized, and I was one of them, and said we would like to help refugees in Northwest Arkansas. And these were people from all across the region, not just Fayetteville, but lots from Springdale, Bentonville, Rogers, from all across these different denominations of churches, and then all kinds of different organizations as well. And so it was our whole community coming together and working really hard that allowed us to establish Canopy as a refugee resettlement agency. So it started from the ground up as opposed to from the top down. And that's pretty remarkable and pretty special. So I'm really honored to get to work with this organization. So now I want to talk a little bit about who are these people that we serve? Who are refugees? That's a term that we hear a lot. And it's kind of ambiguous, or at least it seems kind of ambiguous sometimes. You know, what counts as a refugee? Who is a refugee, and how do they get here? So first of all, I want to go over the established definition of a refugee. So this definition was set by the United Nations, and they have a branch called the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees that oversees all the refugees in the world. And there are about 21 million registered refugees in the world today, and closer to 60 million people who have been displaced but who have not registered with the UN. So it's a lot of people in the world. 21 million people is a country in and of itself. We'll get to that in a minute. So this is the definition that the UN uses for deciding whether somebody is a refugee or not. So a refugee is somebody who cannot return to their home country because they have a well-founded fear of persecution because of their identity, because of who they are. And this is really important because we think of refugees as being people who are running away from something, and they are, but it's not enough for you to be running away just because it's a dangerous situation. You have to be running away from persecution. Somebody has to be trying to persecute you because of who you are, because of your identity, because of either your race, your nationality, your membership of some sort of a social group, your religion, or your political beliefs. So you have to be able to say, they are persecuting me because I am blank, because I am this. And if you can prove that they are persecuting you because you are a Christian, or because you are from a certain tribe, or because you don't believe in what the current president is doing. If you can prove that you are being persecuted because of who you are, then and only then will you be classified as a refugee. So there are plenty of people who have really good reasons for leaving their countries, but they do not get to take the label of refugee unless they're being persecuted because of their identity. So it is a really, really narrow definition. When we're talking about refugees, we're talking about people who truly are incredibly vulnerable and in great danger. So like I said, we have 21 million refugees who have fled their home countries and have registered with the United Nations. That's a huge, staggering number. As you can see, the majority of the people who have fled their home countries are currently being hosted by countries in the Middle East and North Africa and in Africa. The United States does take in a substantial number of refugees every year. This year we are taking in 50,000. Last year we took in 85,000. But it is a small contribution compared to what a lot of countries take in, as you can see. So as I said, this last year we took in 85,000 refugees, and we had originally started out this year with the goal of taking in 110,000. But that has since been reduced to 50,000 under the new administration. Canopy in Northwest Arkansas plays a really small part in all of this, but we're just trying to do our part to help as many people as we can. We were originally planning to resettle 100 individuals, and we were very excited about that. Since the total number across the board has been cut in half, our number has also essentially been cut in half. So for our first year, we're no longer expecting any more than 50, which is certainly disappointing to us. We have a lot of volunteers who are ready to welcome these families, and we've had to tell them, it's going to be a little bit longer before they get here, and certainly our staff are eager to be able to help them. But we're just going to continue doing the most good we can with the families that we have here. And I do want to just go ahead and point out that while this is absolutely life-changing for the people who get to come here, it doesn't actually, it's not actually going to cause too great of a difference to those of us who already live here, because our region is growing and developing really, really quickly. According to the most recent census data that we have, which is pretty old, the Northwest Arkansas Council estimates that roughly 30 people are moving to Northwest Arkansas every day. So that means that you would have, 100 people moving to Northwest Arkansas every 3.5 days or so. And that's the total number of people that we were looking at bringing in for the whole year. So on the one hand, it's absolutely life-changing for the people who are going to get to come here and start new lives here. And on the other hand, it just really is, it just fits right in with the trend that's already happening. And it's not really revolutionary at all for those of us who live here. If you would prefer not to be involved, you wouldn't even notice it's happening. So I wanted to share a little bit about how refugees get to Northwest Arkansas. It's a very long process. For most people, it takes multiple decades, really a lifetime for a lot of people. So the first step is you have to flee your home country. And this in and of itself can take a really long time. Like we said in the definition, a refugee is somebody who cannot return to their home country. So in order for you to not be able to return, that means you have to have left in the first place. So the very first step to being classified as a refugee is you have to get out, you have to cross the border of the country that you were born into. And this can be really challenging. This involves, it's dangerous, it's treacherous, and like I said, there are close to 60 million people who have been displaced and who have not been able to get outside of their country, but who are displaced inside their country. And so that's the first step, is you have to get outside of your home country, you have to cross the border, and you have to get to a neighboring country or a country somewhere else where you can say, I'm a refugee, please do not send me back home, it's not safe for me to go back home. So you seek out somebody either in the local government, or usually you try to find somebody from the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, who has a camp or a base in that country, and you say, please take me in. I can't go back home, I am being persecuted, and I'm scared for my life. And so at that point, it's a waiting game. You're safer, you're put into some sort of a camp, and you're given daily rations of food and water, and then you're just told to wait until your case can be heard, until we can figure out what to do with you. And depending on where you go to and the number of resources that there are in that country, you could be waiting, the shortest period of time is about 1.5 years, or you could be waiting on average 17 years. 17 years is the average wait for a refugee in a camp. That's not made up, that sounded made up when I first heard it, but I can now say that of the people that we have resettled, the majority of them were waiting, I believe it was the shortest period of time we've gotten was 14 years. So, for those who are coming out of Africa, that is. If you go through Europe, it's a much shorter wait period because there's a lot more resources. So we have 2 families who went through Turkey, which I consider to mostly be Europe, and they had to wait about 3.5 years. So it was much shorter. But for our families who came out of Africa, or we had a family who came out of Burma, their wait was, the shortest time I think I saw was 14 years. So that's a really long time. So anyway, so whether you're waiting 3 years or 14 years or 17 years, at some point your case does get heard, and there's the opportunity for you to prove to somebody, to an official, that you fit that definition of a refugee, that very narrow definition. You can say, I can't go back home, I'm fearing for my life because they're persecuting me because of who I am. And so you go ahead and you make that case, and they try to look at as much evidence as they can. So it'd be helpful if you could provide, if you're saying, my uncle was murdered because we belong to the wrong tribe, if you could provide a death certificate that shows that your uncle was indeed murdered. So they want to see as much evidence as they can for your claim, because it's a very serious claim. And at some point, once you've done your interview, you've provided your evidence, and they can conclude that yes, you do fit the definition of a refugee, then they got to look at their options. So now what do we do with you? So you are a refugee, what's next? Well, the most common outcome, and everybody's number one favorite outcome, is maybe you can go home. If you've been waiting for 17, 20 years in a camp, it's possible that back home the dictator has died, or the war has ended, or there's been some sort of a change where it would be safe for you to go back home. And if that's the case, that is everybody's number one option. Everybody loves that. So the UN works to facilitate that. They try to help you get back home, get back on your feet, reconnect with family members, and that is the most common outcome, actually. Most refugees, they go somewhere, they wait in a camp for a couple decades, things get sorted out, they're able to go back home. And that's great. And so that is by far the most common outcome. But in some situations, it's just not safe. The war is still ongoing, or the situation hasn't changed yet. And so then we look at the second option, which is, okay, could you stay where you are? Could you stay in Turkey or in Kenya or in Thailand? Would that country take you in and give you a pathway to citizenship and count you as one of their permanent residents? And this is the second most common option. We see this happening a lot in a lot of these host countries, where they say, we'll take in a certain number every year, and they can become part of our community. We'll give them a pathway to citizenship, and we'll pretend they were never refugees, we'll just let them become citizens here. But in some cases that doesn't work out. The country that you fled to maybe doesn't want to take you, or they don't have the resources for you, or maybe you're not actually even super safe in that country. And so that is when the UN considers resettlement. And this is when they basically send you to one of their partner countries who have agreed to take in refugees who have nowhere else to go. There are about 22 of these countries in the world, and the United States is a leader. The United States is one of those 22 countries that has said, if you have somebody who literally cannot go anywhere else, we will take them. And I think that's that's a wonderful thing. I think it is in keeping with our values as a nation, and I think it's something we have to preserve. It's something we've been doing ever since the end of World War II, and it is something we have to fight for. It's so important. I'd like to add too that this is something that is really, really pretty rare. About 1% of all refugees in the world end up getting resettled somewhere else. The vast majority go home, some of them stay where they are, and then 1% who have nowhere else to go get to come to a country like America or Sweden or Australia. And that country's decided for them. They don't get to say, oh, I'd like to go here. They find out, you're going to America. And then, when you find out you're going to America, then the real fun begins. Then everything that you have proven so far, you have to reprove. Because we want to be really, really sure that you are who you say you are, and that you are a refugee. And so you basically have to go about reproving your refugee status to the immigration office in the United States. And then, once you've done that, and they can say, okay, yeah, we agree you're a refugee, then the vetting process starts. This involves collecting your biometric data for the Department of Homeland Security's database and the Department of Defense's database. It involves several rounds after rounds of interviews and checks by all of our intelligence agencies, as well as several international intelligence databases. And there are actually 9 security clearances that you have to have active at one time to be able to travel to the United States. So, and these have to be active for all members of your family, for your family to be able to travel. And these can expire between 3 to 6 months after you get them. So if something, for example, like the recent travel ban happens and you're told, okay, you can't travel for, however many days, in that time, your travel clearance, one of them could expire, and then the time that it takes to get it renewed, the other ones could expire, and then your family's expires. Before you know it, it's another 1.5 years before everything is lined up perfectly again for you to be able to travel. So it really is a very rigorous, robust vetting process. And it is by far the most difficult, scrutinized, and time-consuming way to come to the United States. It's not easy for anybody to get here. We make it pretty difficult. And if you know any immigrants, or if you yourself are an immigrant, you can attest to that it usually takes several months, and there's at least one interview, and it's difficult. But if you come any other way, it is so much easier. If you want to come as a student, or if you want to come as a tourist, or if you want to come on a work visa, there are way fewer steps and you are way less scrutinized than if you're going to come as a refugee. So when we talk about the concerns about the vetting process and the security process, it doesn't really make sense to me why refugees are the ones that we're concerned about. Because they are the most scrutinized, carefully checked population that's coming to our country. And they are also the most vulnerable. They are the ones who are fleeing these horrible situations. So when we talk about the security process, when we talk about vetting, this is incredibly thorough. And there are people who are working hard to make sure that if there are any chinks in the armor anywhere, if there are any weaknesses, that we're identifying them. But this process has gone on ever since the end of World War II. And do you know how many people have ever been killed by a refugee in that time? Well, there were 3 people who were killed by a group of Cuban refugees in the 50s. And there hasn't been anybody killed, harmed, or otherwise bothered by a refugee ever since then. And none of them have been from any of the countries that we're really concerned about. So I would say that when we look at the facts, when we look at the process is very, very rigorous. And then when we look at the results speak for themselves. And so while there's all kinds of different things that we can be concerned about in the world, the refugee resettlement process is not one, in my opinion. So now I just want to get into a little bit more about what it is that we do with them once they're actually here. So they have a very long journey to come here, but what do we do with them once they're actually here? Well, Canopy has a contract with the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service and the State Department to provide services to refugees. And this contract lays out really clearly what is expected of us and what they would like us to do for refugees when they're here. It's called the Cooperative Agreement. And essentially, this cooperative agreement outlines a program that lasts 3 months, lasts 90 days, that is all. And during those 90 days, we have to get these people connected to all the services that they need and get them equipped to be able to take care of themselves at the end of those 90 days using those services. So it doesn't mean at the end of those 90 days that they don't need help from anybody anymore, but it means that they know where to find help, they know how to access it, and they can access that help and take care of themselves on their own after those 90 days. It is a very quick pace. There is not much time wasted at all. But this works out well because the refugees are very eager to be self-sufficient again. They have been waiting for decades to be able to take care of themselves and decide things for themselves. So they're ready. They're rearing to go. And as it happens, our government is also eager for them to not be dependent on them anymore. So there's 3 months where we're able to help them out with rental assistance and food and clothing, case management, all kinds of things like that. And then at the end of those 3 months, they need to be able to stand on their own and be able to take care of themselves using just their own resources and then the resources that we have connected them to in the community. So this is kind of a quick rundown of all the services that we need to provide in the first 90 days. I won't go into it too much, but basically it's sort of what you'd imagine. You pick them up at the airport, you take them to an apartment. We have it already furnished and cleaned and ready for them. There's food in the fridge, and there's a meal that's ready to be heated up as soon as they get home. And then we have to go visit them the next day after they arrive. In this case, this year, there were some folks who arrived December 23rd, so I spent my Christmas Eve with them. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas Eve, you have to go see them the next day. And then within a week, you have to help them apply for their Social Security cards. They do qualify for whatever public assistance we would qualify for, so we help them apply for that if they qualify. Help them enroll in ESL programs, help their children enroll in schools. They have to go get a medical screening and make sure that they don't have any sort of disease that could be harmful to themselves or those around them. And then we start also the process of cultural orientation. So we do this a couple different ways. We have classes that they come to every week for 4 weeks. And then we also have matched them with a community mentoring team, or we call them co-sponsor teams. And these teams play a huge role also in cultural orientation. They help them learn how to ride the bus, they help them learn how to pay their bills, they help them set up bank accounts, They help them, just figure out, there's all kinds of little things, how to use the microwave and, how to say hello to your neighbor and what to do when somebody, brings a survey to your door, whatever. So they're just a constant resource for them. And then one of the biggest things we do, and we get started with this usually within 2 weeks after they arrive, is we start job training for all employable adults. So we figure out, okay, what are your expenses going to be? How much money do you need making every month to meet those expenses? Okay, that means that you need to be working full-time and you need to be working at least part-time in order for you to break even. So we work with them to figure out, what are your goals? What would you enjoy doing? And it's not always going to work out where we can place them in their dream job on day one. It usually doesn't work out that way. But we make them help them to understand that, hey, you start here, you start working, as a dishwasher, and you work on your English, you go to English classes, and then within maybe 4 to 6 months, we could help you apply to something that might have a little bit higher pay. You work on getting your GED, and you can definitely get something with higher pay. You work on going to classes at NWAC, we can definitely help you get something. So we set like short and long-term goals, and we try to take into account what it is that they would enjoy doing right now and in the future. And then we just try to help connect them to resources so that they can go out and achieve those goals for themselves. So in a nutshell, we have 3 months in which we're able to provide assistance for them, cover their expenses while they're getting settled. And in those 3 months, we have to connect them to all the systems of support that they're going to need to be able to take care of themselves. So employment, public assistance, community co-sponsors, classes, and everything else that they need, healthcare. And then beyond the 90 days, those community co-sponsor teams play a really big role because they're the ones who continue to walk with them after that assistance is ended. And we're still available. They still call us all the time. We have families who are done with their 90 days and they'll call us with a question about something they got in the mail or they're not sure what they should do. So we're still a resource for them. But they really are at this point. They're drawing in their own income. They're getting around town by themselves on the buses, and one gentleman even got himself a car and a driver's license already. So they're pretty resourceful, and we found that while 90 days is a really short amount of time, they jump right in and they get stuff done, and as long as we can keep up with them, they're ready to go. So yeah, how are we doing? This is a quick update just on where we are today. So we got our first families in December, right before Christmas. And we have continued to receive people slowly since then. We have a total of 30 people who have arrived to date. And we're expecting 50 by the end of the year. And the federal fiscal year ends in October. So we're expecting roughly 20 more people between now and October, which is really slow. That is not the pace we'd like to be at in the future, but we're doing our best with it right now. So we have, of the people who've arrived so far, I believe we have 17 or 18 employable adults. 15 of those have already received offers of employment. The remaining 2 or 3 just got here about 3 weeks ago, so we still got some time with them. And so far, 100% of our clients have received offers of employment before their 90th day, before the government assistance ends. And all of them have been self-sufficient by that time as well. That means they're bringing in enough income to pay all of their expenses. So that's really, really remarkable. And I think that's a testament to just how great our community is, that the cost of living is so low and the amount of jobs available is so high that we're able to get these people who really have very limited English and limited education into jobs right away and supporting themselves right away. Another important statistic too is that they do all sign up for public assistance when they get here, including temporary or transitional employment assistance, or T, which is a state program that gives cash assistance to families with children who have very little or no income. And already 3 of our families have already been bumped off of that cash assistance because their income is high enough, they don't need it anymore, and they've only been here for 3 months. So people are quickly moving towards self-sufficiency and independence. They have no desire to be a burden on anybody, and they work really hard to make sure that they're not. Another just quick update on what we're doing. We've got everybody enrolled in English classes and public schools. It's also been really great to watch people get medical attention for the first time in years, or in some cases decades, really. There was one particular family where a brother and a sister were injured in a suicide bombing in their home city of Baghdad. And the brother lost all his vision in his right eye, and his sister lost all her hearing. And it was really pretty traumatic and sad. And since they've been here, they've been able to have really life-altering medical care. So the brother actually had some pretty intense eye surgery in his right eye and is being fitted for a lens that will allow him to see again out of that eye, which is really incredible. And his sister, who is completely deaf and who never had a system to communicate, because there wasn't sign language taught in their schools, for the first time is learning how to be able to talk using sign language. And it makes me want to learn sign language because she's signing all over the place, so excited to be able to tell me things for the first time, to be able to communicate and speak. And all I can say is, yeah, good job. So I'm learning a little bit. And she actually has a consultation on the calendar at the Children's Hospital in Little Rock for May. She's going to get to go in, and they're going to see if she might be a candidate for a cochlear transplant. So, cochlear transplant? Cochlear. It's medical terms. Implant. Is that what it is? Okay, there we go. You all know more about this than I do. So we're very excited for that. And that would potentially allow her to regain some or all of her hearing. So we're really excited. And again, one of the most wonderful things I think about our job, my work so far, has just been watching our community get involved and interact. And so these are just some pictures of our community and how they've just been so great to welcome our families. So up at the top, that was the head coach of the University of Arkansas hockey team emailed me and said, hey, I'd love for all your families to come and join us for a hockey game, as our guests. And I'd love if somebody might want to do the honorary puck drop at the start of the game. And so the little boy you can hardly see on the right, he is one of our refugee children who just arrived, and he went up and did the puck drop with his new friend who's part of his co-sponsor team. And they did the puck drop, and that was just so fun. And then after that, the national anthem played. And it was really fun to watch this little boy hear the national anthem for the first time. And he looked around and he could see everybody else was standing, with their hand on their heart. And so he stood and he put his hand on his heart. And I don't think he even knew really what he was doing, but it was neat for him to hear his new national anthem for the first time. Over there on the right, you might recognize Congressman Womack. We had a wonderful meeting with him a few weeks ago when he was in the district. And the gentleman he is visiting with there is this little boy's father. He is a refugee from the Congo. And Congressman Womack was giving him some tips on how to be successful in the workplace. He told him, if you can come to work 5 minutes early and stay 10 minutes late, you will go places, you will stand out. And so Mr. Shabani, Mr. Majidi, took that to heart. And then he actually presented him with a congressional coin. And shook his hand and told him he was welcome here in Arkansas. And that really, I think it touched all of us, but especially Majidi, to know that he is welcome here. And there's a lot of things going around that might make a refugee not feel very welcome, but it really meant a lot that our congressman felt like he needed to say that. Down here on the left, we had a wonderful group of people who helped us get bicycles to all of our refugee families. And so here is a Congolese man, a different gentleman who's helping his 6-year-old son learn to ride a bike for the first time. And that's just really fun. And we love that there's so many great bike trails in our community. And this is just a picture of one of our co-sponsor teams at the airport ready to welcome their family. That's something neat that we get to do with co-sponsor teams. They get to come to the airport and be there to just welcome and receive the family as soon as they arrive. And this is the gentleman who has got his driver's license now, and he is on the road. He's used to driving on the other side of the road, so we're hoping he can keep it in the right lane. But he's very focused when he drives, very focused. And so, yeah, anyway, and he was able to get his license because his co-sponsor team worked hard with him to help him study. They took him to take his test a couple times, took him a couple times to pass it. And then they even helped him to find the car that he is driving now. And so all of these successes really, if we find the root of them, a lot of them come back to our community, to our local businesses who say, yeah, I want to hire a refugee, and to our co-sponsor teams that say, yeah, we want to mentor and invest in these refugees. And then all of the community partners that help us provide excellent care for them, the public schools, the community clinic that does all our medical screenings, the Department of Human Services that helps them get access to public assistance. Everybody is they have been so welcoming and so excited about this, and that has made all the difference. And so far, the 30 people that we have here, I can really say that I think they're thriving. And I don't think that's because I'm doing anything particularly exceptional. I think that's because our community is doing something exceptional. So it is a real honor to get to do this. So how can you help? How can you be a part of this amazing thing that's happening in our community? There are a couple different ways that you can get involved, and I would recommend that you start by just going to our website, CanopyNWA.org. There's all the same information that I just gave today. You'll find that on our website. And then the information about how you can get involved is up there as well. So one thing you can do is you can come to things like this, learn more about the refugee process, and then invite us to come and share with people that you know. I feel like probably everybody here learned something that they didn't know before today. And maybe that changed your heart a little bit, or it changed the way you thought about something. And so that's really important, and we want to be able to continue to do this all across the community, answer people's questions and give them good information. So if you can think of a group of people that might like to hear what I shared with you today, let me know. Email me or our community outreach coordinator, Lauren, and we would be delighted to come and speak with you. You can also donate. A couple times a year we will have donation drives for welcome baskets, bicycles, and backpacks with school supplies. We will, if you sign up for emails on our website, you can find out about when these are happening and get involved. You can also set up a one-time or a monthly recurring donation. This is something that is so helpful. We do receive funding from the State Department for our work, but it is not sufficient, and it's designed that way. They want us to have community partners and community involvement. So we have some funds coming in from the government, but over half of what we use in our budget actually comes from our community. So if you would like to be a part and support our work that way, we would be delighted. You can either give online or you can send us a check, and make it really simple. Volunteering. There are a couple of big ways that you can help volunteer. And again, if you go to our website, you can sign up to do any of these things. We have, one of the biggest needs is transportation. We teach them how to ride the bus, and the bus is great for some things, but it's also limited, and there are places and times that you can't get there on the bus, or it would take you a really, really long time. So we've created a network of volunteer drivers who can go onto our website and see when a ride is needed and sign up to take that ride. And that has been so wonderful for our clients to be able to get to where they need to go through volunteers. That's just one thing you can do. There are all kinds of other volunteer roles on our website, and you can check those out. One thing that we have coming up, and I'll talk about this at the end, is we have this wonderful exhibit being put on by the Students for Refugees group on the University of Arkansas campus, and we are partnering with them in that. And it is going to be a mock refugee camp where you will be able to go through stations that simulate a refugee's experience on their journey. And so it's going to be very interactive, it's going to be really hands-on, it's open to the public, and we do still, as of right now, need some volunteers to help with different roles in that. And so I'll come back to that in just a minute. Another thing y'all can help us with is fundraising. Like I said, we are supported by our community, by donations, and so sometimes, you might not have a lot to give yourself, but you can get your community organized, have some friends over for a movie and just charge $5 a ticket and have all that money come into Canopy. Or some other things that people have done, they've had garage sales, or they've hosted a dinner and just asked people to bring a donation when they come. We are also, we just ordered about 100 t-shirts that we are excited to sell, so you can support us by buying a t-shirt once they're ready in a couple weeks. Another thing you can do if you are working for a larger business or organization is you can ask them. A lot of times businesses like to support causes that their employees care about. So you can see if they might be interested in matching a donation from you, or asking them kind of, what do you do how does your philanthropy work? And a lot of big businesses in the area have supported us because their employees have asked them to. So here we go. These are our upcoming events, and I really want to focus on the mock refugee camp. So I've got some flyers up here if you'd like to grab one on your way out. I don't have a whole lot, but some flyers with some information. So like I said, this one is going to be an interactive exhibit. It'll be Sunday, April 23rd, so that's not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. And it's going to be at the University of Arkansas campus, at the gardens that are just behind Lot 56, where the gazebos are. If you don't know where that is, you can ask me and I'll give you some directions. It'll be open from 12 to 6, and it's free. We would love for you to come and bring your families and walk through it. And then in addition to the actual exhibit, there will be kind of a lot going on around it as well. There's going to be some live music, some food trucks. Canopy will be there with a booth so you can learn more about us or sign up or buy a t-shirt. And Students for Refugees will be all over the place as well. So grab a flyer on your way out, or check out our website. It's all on there as well. That's a big one coming up. But we do also have some other things on the calendar as well. We'll be participating in a panel down in Fayetteville on April 19th. We will be having a fundraiser also in Fayetteville on the 24th. And then we're also going to be doing a dancing and dessert night on May 19th to celebrate. There's a couple families who have been reunited with children from El Salvador, from South America, and we want to celebrate their reunification by having a party. And we're going to have some salsa dancing, we're going to have some great Salvadoran food. So if you'd like to come out and learn how to salsa dance and have some great Salvadoran desserts, we'd love to have you there. And so now I want to go ahead and just take your questions. We don't have too much time left, but I'd love to hear any questions you have, or else you can come and grab me afterwards. I'll stick around.
Where are the families resettled here in Northwest Arkansas?
So she asked, where are the families resettled? We resettle, our office is in Fayetteville, so we have most of our families are in Fayetteville right now, but we do have one family in Springdale, 2 families up in Rogers, and we are hoping to be able to resettle all across the region. That is the goal. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a lot of difficulty with communication, or are these people somewhat prepared to come to this country? Have they learned some English while they're waiting?
That's a good question. So she asked if people know any English when they come. It's a mixed bag. Some people know a lot, especially if they come from countries where maybe they learned English in school. We have some people who've come with quite a lot of English, and then we have some people who've come with nothing at all. So in that, we have a lot of volunteer translators, as well as a couple paid translators who help us out when we're providing services to our clients to make sure they understand what we're saying. And so if they don't speak English, we make sure that there is an interpreter present always. And then they get enrolled in English class as soon as they get here. So it's chop chop, time to learn English as soon as they arrive, if they don't already know it.
How do you arrange housing? Are they sponsored by a family locally, or how do you get them first established in the community?
So he asked how we find housing for them. So we actually just go about it just the way that you would for anybody looking for an apartment. We try to get them set up in their own apartment, in their own name, with a lease that they sign from the beginning. And that's a little tricky because they're not here yet. So finding apartment complexes that are willing to work with us is difficult. But we found some partners who've been great. It helps that in the Fayetteville area, it's not super unlike international students looking for housing. So people are kind of used to the concept of saying, hey, I've got somebody arriving in 3 weeks, they'd like a 2-bedroom, can I go ahead and pay a deposit, and they'll sign the lease when they get here. So that takes a little bit of figuring out, but that's basically how we do it. And in Fayetteville, it's worked out pretty well because, like I said, it's sort of like when international students come and need apartments. You know, the parts of Northwest Arkansas, actually housing has been our biggest challenge, finding partners who are willing to let us, secure an apartment for somebody before they arrive. And then also, a lot of times when people get here, or always when people get here, they don't have social security numbers yet, they don't have a background of any sort, they don't have a credit history. So that can be really challenging too. But what we need to do is just establish relationships where they understand who Canopy is and what we're doing, and they can have some faith in us to allow us to advocate for these refugees and help put them in housing.
Let's give Emily a great big hand.